We finish up our exposition of the Red Record up to the end of Chapter 3, and we address some of the flood of viewer comments in the mailbag. This is Genesis Week. And welcome to another episode of Genesis Week, the weekly program of creationary commentary on news, views, and events pertaining to the Origins controversy made possible by you, the supporters of CORE Ottawa, Citizens for Origins Research and Education. Excellence in pirate broadcasting coming to you, riding the carrier waves of the Miracle Channel right across Canada via cable and satellite. We are also being carried down in central Michigan on GNS-TV, all around the world on the Genesis Science Network, and of course on the internets, on Rumble and YouTube. Remember, if you get lost in cyberspace, you can find us at genesisweek.com or my Rumble channel, or on YouTube at wazulu.com. I'm your host, Ian Juby, joined momentarily by my co-host, Al Vachon. Today is Tuesday, January 30th, 2024. We are going to pick up where we left off in our previously recorded live stream, continuing our examination of the Walam Olum, otherwise known as the Red Record. So pretty remarkable how much this stacks up and lines up with the Genesis account. It goes on. He, the creator, gave them fish, gave them turtles, he gave the beasts, he gave the birds. But an evil spirit caused bad beings, black snakes. Isn't that interesting? Why so specific? Black snakes, monsters, and sea monsters. Some translated it as sea monsters. I'm not quite sure why. I couldn't figure that out from the word. I think that was McCutcheon, actually, that suggested sea monsters was one of the translations. He might be right. I don't know. I couldn't see where he got that from, but I could see where the word monster would come from, though. That was kind of what was implied. Next verse. The evil spirit caused flies, gnats, or mosquitoes. Totally agree there. Ugh, mosquitoes. Definitely result of the fall.
The only good thing about January.
That's right. The snow flies, the mosquitoes don't.
That's exactly right.
Now we are into chapter 3. I believe. This is chapter 3. So, we've now moved on in the song. We've now moved on a chapter. And this is where, again, I hope you're following with this, because this is mind-blowing. So the next verse, talking about the original creation. Get a load of this. All beings were friendly with each other. Do you remember what Genesis says about all the animals and people and what they ate, Al? Pop quiz.
The grasses.
The grasses, plants.
The grass.
No
plants.
animals ate meat. They didn't kill each other. People weren't
That's
violent originally. And here's what they're saying in the Lenape Red Record as well. All beings were friendly with each other. They were at peace with each other. Truly, the benefactor and the helpful spirits were busy to the first men and to those first mothers, and he fetched them wives. The Creator fetched them the first food when they desired it. All were carefree and happy and easy thinking. And I really liked this. By the way, these are my translations. So I've, for those of you who caught the last show, this is a compilation of the 3 previous translators from the 1800s right through to 1995 with McCutcheon, and my own understanding of glyphs and my own studies into First Nations languages, how they work, etc. and the glyphs, as well as the Indian hand sign language. So I'm kind of compiling all these, and where I can, I'm trying to just basically come to an agreement of all the three translators, trying to bring it into agreement with the glyphs themselves and with my own understanding of what I'm seeing. So these are my translations for the record. All were carefree and happy and easy thinking. I specifically chose those words. McCutcheon used something along those lines, but when you take a look at the original Lenape words in the song, this is kind of what they implied, was that thinking was in itself easier back then at the beginning of creation, which again comes back profoundly to the creation science community about how people at the beginning were hyper intelligent and were actually losing intelligence over time, which is contrary. It's what's the word? Counterintuitive to what most people. They think, oh, well, we've got computers and stuff. Adam and Eve didn't have computers. Clearly, we're more intelligent. Adam and Eve didn't need computers because they were more intelligent. They could do math like that, whereas we need supercomputers. And they were supercomputers themselves. By the way,
I've heard somebody say, imagine making a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, and how time and copies degrade over time. I think it's the same thing from creation to where we are today.
Mm-hmm.
When God initially made Adam and Eve, they weren't a copy of a copy, they were the original.
Yes.
And as the generations followed, the copy of the copy of the copy, plus you've got the diseases and everything that goes along with it, of course the original is going to be the best of the best with the memories and the knowledge and everything else. And I think they were much more advanced than we are today.
Yes, I agree. I'm just going to go through a few comments real quick here.
While you're looking, I've got one on Rumble, RLB 706. I love this one. It says, Ian is the professor, teacher, quizzing Al like my teachers used to do. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Okay. So next verses, I forget which verse we're at now. So this is after a perfect creation. Everything is in unity. There's no violence. Animals are not eating meat. They're not killing each other. People are not fighting each other. It's a peaceful world. All is well. But then, very secretly, came an evil snake god, a priest snake, a worship snake on the earth. Wow. Why the snake?
Isn't that profound?
Yeah, and look at, and I went over this like 4 or 5 times because the previous translators, they said things along these lines, but they also swapped out the words. And if you take a look at the original Lenape song words, really, this is what it boils down to. It actually calls it an evil snake god, a priest snake, and a worship snake. And of course, for those of you who have read the scriptures, it talks about how Lucifer, before he fell from heaven, he was a musician. And he would lead worship in heaven before he got kicked out because he tried to take over heaven. Mm-hmm. So it's just stunningly profound to me. And again, if you were hoaxing this, why would you put this stuff in there? It doesn't really make sense. However, okay, so the snake god comes, and brings with him there on earth wickedness, crime, and unhappiness. The symbol here. There's the snake, by the way, for those of you following along. And he brought with him bad weather, sickness, brought death. Wow. Almost like there wasn't death before this time. All of this was very long ago on the first land before the Great Flood. So that brings us to the end of that book.
I was just going to say this, for the people watching and listening here, this is my first time seeing this as well. I've never seen this presentation. I haven't seen these slides. I haven't really been through the information. It's spectacularly paralleled with Genesis in the book of the Bible. It's just you couldn't make this up. Such a distant people in a different language on a different land, having parallel information, details so precisely tuned with the Bible. I think it's you're right when you say, Ian. I don't think this was faked in any way. I think this is actually very genuine.
And I'm just going through the comments real quick here. A lot of people are saying what I said a lot today. Just wow, holy mackerel. Yeah, I said that a few times today too, because a lot of this stuff I hadn't, as I mentioned in the previous episode, Tino Gropey was always mocking me because I'd never heard about this before last year. I'd never heard about the Red Record. I'm like, Walam Olum? What's that? Right. And so then Julie got me this book, and then I stumble upon Rafink's original manuscripts and these multiple translations, including Brinton from 1885. And I'm going through all these going, gads, why have I never heard of this before? And fortunately, because of the past year and a half, past 2 years, only because I've been, I believe the Lord has called me to move into working with the First Nations people here in Canada, that I've been learning the First Nations languages. I've been learning their cultures, their stories. I've been working on educational programs for First Nations kids, literally right across the country. So I'm trying to learn multiple languages and cultures. And one of the reasons for all this, which Al and I actually have a history here, we go back quite a ways. We're working right now on a children's creation science show. Now, it is not a First Nations kids show. However, one of the kids in the show, so it's 3D animated, and it is myself and 5 super genius kids. And we are all at the Tech Valley Science Center. And we explore God's creation using the inventions that the kids are producing in slave labor. Yes. So these super genius kids come to the Tech Valley Science Center, and we all work together and we develop their inventions, and we have a lot of fun. We travel literally around the universe, go under the oceans, etc., and explore God's creation and learn about the Creator and Christ, who is that Creator. And one of the kids in there is a kid I call Jeremy. And he is, so far, he's the only really developed character. So Jeremy comes from one of the remote First Nations tribes in northwestern Ontario. The primary focus of the show is a Canadian show, focusing mostly on Canadians. And in particular, Jeremy is a Canadian First Nations child. So while he grows up on the reserve, he sees that the water problems, the drinking water problems on the reserve. He sees that his mother, she can't really bathe the baby because just bathing the baby, their skin turns red. Just doing the dishes, his mother's skin turns red from the water. And so he teaches himself basically civil engineering. So he learns chemistry, civil engineering, and he's a super genius. So he figures out all these ways, and as a result of all this and teaching himself all these things like chemistry, he winds up at the Tech Valley Science Center. And so this is what we've got so far in a rough draft. Basically, he's got his lab coat, but he's got flourishes, First Nations native flourishes. But every show is like The Simpsons. it starts off, the beginning of every show is slightly different. And the beginning of every show, we go through each of the 5 kids and myself, and we introduce the 5 kids. And they're each doing something different at the beginning of the show. Jeremy is always test flying his rocket pack. So he learned chemistry, and he designs and builds this rocket backpack, and he's always flying it out of control. Give me a second, I lost my ear. And he's always flying it out of control, and as he's flying out of control through the sky, he spells out a different word in smoke in the sky. And that word applies to the current day's episode, right? So this is, so he is one of the 5 kids. So while the First Nations population of children in Canada, I'm going to take a wild stab at it. It's probably 0.8% of the population of Canada. Like kids, I don't know, like 12 and younger. That's just a guess, but it's probably pretty close. So even though First Nations children only make up 0.8% of the population of Canada, 20% of the show is specifically targeting that viewer audience and looking to educate them in both in science and technology and their culture. Because Jeremy has a fascination and obsession with First Nations languages, storytelling, like what we just went through with the Walam Olum, and he has gathered just tons of information from cultures and languages all over the world, and he will always be bringing up connections to the scriptures from these cultures, from the storytelling, from the rituals even, as we discussed in this show and the last one, where they are singing. Why are they singing these songs? It's because it helps with memorization. It's because it helps to remember these ancient stories that have been passed down generation to generation. So anyway, also in there, we've got Tony the T-Rex. And Al and I go back way along. So originally it was going to be live action. And that is why I'm out in the Badlands of Alberta here filming with Tony the T-Rex. And Al was the voice, and still going to be the voice, of Tony the T-Rex. As you can see, he only speaks in pictographs. So, exactly. I was going to ask you to demonstrate. Can you demonstrate voicing him biting his brother's tail? Beautiful. So that's what Al will be doing. So if you want to help out, please help out. We've kicked off the fundraiser. So I'm trying to raise the funds to produce the show. I've got artists here in Canada. Because this is for airing broadcast on TV in Canada, we of course have to follow the Canadian rules and guidelines for Canadian broadcast. So I have to have as much Canadian creator as possible in order to get my Canadian content rating, which is very important for broadcast TV. And this show will be on broadcast TV. So I've got artists here in Canada, 2 young kids, very talented, both of them, very enthusiastic, but they need computers. I'm going to need to pay them for their time. I have voice actors already lined up who have sent in fantastic submissions. It's been a lot of fun just getting to this point. But if you just want to chip in, givesendgo.com/techvalley. That will take you to the crowdfunding page. And if you can chip in and help out, by all means, first of all, pray. Please pray. This has already been almost 2 years now that I've already been fighting with this, and there's been so many delays. Anyway, all right, so please go check it out. You can watch the preview video there as well, where the video explainer, if you will. So at any rate, how about we go to the mailbag, Al?
The Complete Creation video series is just that, an exhaustive look at the science, philosophy, and theology behind the creation-evolution debate. In this 40-part series, Ian Juby walks you through the debate, starting with the philosophical premises and limitations of science, then the surprising history of evolutionary and deep-time beliefs. You then walk through the evidence for creation from biology, geology, physics, paleontology, and archaeology. Chances are, any questions you have about the creation-evolution debate is answered in this video library. The series is both entertaining and educational, and suitable for personal study or homeschoolers. This 40-part series is available on a 20-disc set in either standard definition DVD or high-definition Blu-ray, and is on sale now. Order your hard copies today online at our store at ianjuby.org.
Woohoo! Mail for me? The flood of viewer feedback has not abated on this series, and where we have done a deep dive into the Red Record, a dive which we will continue deeper in upcoming episodes as it gets even wilder than it already has been, because we will encounter the historical parts of the Red Record which challenge conventional evolutionary deep timescales and scientific theories. So hold on to your seats. In the meantime, let's take a quick look at some of the feedback you guys have given. Martin2289 posted on YouTube, "What a ridiculous load of hokum." But is it though? I have humbly and methodically presented my case, which was built not only upon my own knowledge and studies, and I explained my works as well, so that you viewers could study and judge for yourselves. I have built upon the works of several others who have gone on before me over the past 150 years. Nevertheless, I thank you for your comment and would encourage the viewers not to take my word for anything. Study this for yourself and come to your own judgments. Shuva, to him, also wrote in on YouTube, "Hand signs were used in ancient times. Midi statues show some. Michelangelo painted some in his paintings disparaging the church elites. Olam in Hebrew equals world." Thank you for writing in, and thank you for the further squirrel holes I need to explore. I was unaware of these hand signs and sign language that was apparently very prominent in Rome and Greece during the time of Christ. You can even see the hand signs preserved in ancient Roman and Greek art. Just as importantly, especially in the early Greek Orthodox iconography, depicting Christ or the saints, you can see these hand signs. So this gesture, visible in the iconograph Christ Pantocrator from the 6th century, actually shapes the letters ICXC, which is an abbreviation for the Greek words Jesus Christos, and was used as a hand sign for blessing. Of interest, these hand signs were so common and well known in Roman and Greek culture that it's likely that Christ himself used such hand signs in his public speaking. Mr. Christian DT on YouTube wrote in a very long comment, which it would not be possible to read and respond to the entire thing, nor could I do it justice. So I apologize, Mr. Christian DT. I'm going to just glean a couple of sentences from your fascinating and enlightening comment for brevity. He wrote, "Well, there are some issues with the Walam Olum record he presented, mainly the fact that no one could find all the sources he used to piece the story he presented together afterwards. So it's no longer considered that accurate to Lenape culture. Thank you for taking the time to write. I at least partly agree. This was a major part of Brinton's 1885 evaluation, where he acknowledged that, sadly, the original Walam Olum prayer sticks were lost, and all he had to work with was Rafink's manuscript, which Brinton held. Brinton kind of held Rafink's works to the fire and methodically analyzed it in all possible angles, even going so far as to consider the possibility that it is all a hoax. He built his very solid case throughout his book, culminating in his reinterpretation of the Walam Olum, which, for the better part agreed remarkably with Raffinsk's. Now, when you say it's no longer considered that accurate to the Lenape culture, I would like to suggest to you that instead it is the modern Lenape culture which has changed and is no longer accurate. That the historic prayer sticks are actually closer to the original songs, glyphs, and hand signs, and thus the modern songs, glyphs, and hand signs have mutated over time and are now very different from the originals, which brings me to your next fascinating comment. That being said, you can get a somewhat and likely accurate idea of what the Lenape creation story should have been by looking at what little we have written by several Algonquian tribes. What you are suggesting here is a good suggestion and is precisely what Brinton did, and why he concluded that the prayer sticks were likely made by a Shawnee Indian. But just in my studies of the Algonquin tribes here in Ontario, you can find incredible variation in the Nanabush stories, for example. Even the name Nanabush is sometimes Nanabojo, Wanabojo, or Manabojo. Quite different. But what I've been told by some elders is that the name used by the storyteller is determined not just by the dialect, but also who the story is being told to. In other words, if you were telling the story to a grandfather, you use the name Nanabush, but for a grandmother, you use the name Nanabojo. This is how it is done orally. So with the prayer sticks, they do not make these changes because you don't know who is reading them. But the point I'm making here is just that here with the Algonquins in Ontario, you can see several very different versions of the same story. The stories have become mutated generation to generation. Anyway, thank you for writing in. Obviously, we could carry on that fascinating discussion at great length, but I'm out of time. I have to call that a wrap for this week. Please join us again for the next episode where we make our way through the rest of the chapters in the Walam Olum, and I will leave you with those words of warning and comfort from our Creator, the Lord Jesus Christ, who said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through me." God bless you all.
You can send your comments, questions, hate mail, and letter bombs to us in a number of ways. You can email comments at genesisweek.com, or you can tweet at GenesisWeek. Or leave a comment on CORE's Facebook page at CORE Ottawa. Or leave a comment on the appropriate show available on either the Rumble channel, rumble.com/user/IanJuby, or on the YouTube channel, which you can easily find by going to wazulu.com, that's Ian, and that'll take you straight to the YouTube channel. But just remember, these shows are now recorded live, so you'll want to search out the show under the Live tab. We need your support to keep this program on the air, so please pray for us. And if you wish to financially support the program, Canadians can make a tax-deductible donation via PayPal online at ianjuby.org/donations, or you can mail a check written out to CORE, Canada North, Post Office Box 72075, Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, K2K 2P4. And thank you for your support.